you all. Diolch yn fawr iawn am... Oh, no, hang on, it's the wrong country. It's the wrong country, I don't have to worry with that stuff. I want to thank John, and I want to thank Vincent. And I know they're going to get thanked again later, but I think it's very important that we just reflect upon the amount of effort that's gone into producing this. And really, what I want to try and do now is I want to kind of just go over what we've heard today. So I've been making notes, and I just want to go through some of the issues again and explore those. But what I want everybody here to be thinking about is how we take this forward. How we look at, you know, we've heard so many problems. We have a huge amount of problems. What we need to do now is focus on solutions. And that really is what I want everybody here to think about when I just recap on what we've heard. So we heard first of all from Chris Cloak at NSPCC. And what I want to draw from Chris's presentation was the focus on emotional abuse. And I think that's a significant element, and NSPCC sees that as a significant element. What I also drew from it was that there's a doorway that's open with NSPCC for us to engage with them. And I think possibly Chris maybe hasn't entirely yet bought in to the understanding of parental alienation. But what I found very interesting was that in a case study, one of the case studies he shared, it shouted to me that it was parental alienation. And I think we need, instead of seeing that as a negative with NSPCC, I want us to look at it as a fantastic opportunity. Because I think they understand the issues, they just aren't perhaps reflecting it in a way that we might think is the way to move forward. Now, Dr. Sue Whitcomb, I've never met her before. I had no idea what she was. Sue is fantastic. I think she's an inspiration for me, and I think she's an inspiration for all of us. Yep. Sue talked about, and I've heard Sue speak a number of times, and she's always fantastic. She always teaches me something new. And if I'm honest with you, I've not heard the personal story before. And I think that's probably a huge condemnation of me, because I'm just a heartless swine and I never ask people any questions, because nobody ever tells me anything. Nobody ever comes to our meetings and tells me about what's going on. But anyway, I found Sue's presentation immensely powerful. And it brought it home to me in a very clear and direct way with the story of Caroline. And I suspect there are many of us here who know Caroline in a different form, whether it's a boy, whether it's a girl. We know somebody who's going through those problems. And I felt that there was, that brought home the reality of the experience. We need to learn from these tragic cases. I think we have to also look at the way that we deal with, for example, psychological abuse. So NSPCC, we're talking about emotional abuse, and then we're talking about psychological abuse. Now, I'm perhaps late to the game about calling calling parental alienation psychological abuse. And I understand, no, I don't understand. I'm aware that academics are talking about it as psychological abuse. I look at the issue of Section 66 of the Serious Crime Act 2015.
which in my view criminalises parental alienation. And maybe that's one of the things that we need to be talking about and how we move things forward. Because I think a criminal sanction, even if it isn't used that often, sends an important message, which may be one of those factors that stops alienation at an earlier stage. Sue talked about the impact on brain development. She talked about the adverse childhood experiences model, which is very, very much part of the Welsh Government's thinking, and I think is also part of the thinking in England. She mentioned the resident parent has all the power to influence the child. And I'm going to use one of her technical terms, because I think we often see parental alienation as being that pure, almost as though the other parent has sat down and mapped out in some fantastic Machiavellian way how they're going to, plot to dominate the world. Now, that's very attractive in Bond villains, but sadly, in my experience, most people are neither clever enough nor persistent enough to actually pull off fantastic conspiracies. And often parental alienation is not as easy for everyone to see in the way that those affected by it absolutely experience it. And to use a very important new technical term that Sue has pioneered, we need to understand the shitty grey mess in the middle.
Yeah. Huge.
So I think that, again, is an important thing for us to understand. Now, Stephen Wildblood, he's pretty good, isn't he? Wouldn't you all like to have him in the...
Not your lawyer.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not. What an inspirational bloke. He said both parents to be involved unless serious issues are identified. Now, what fantastic clarity that brings, eh? I want us to think about the question that he posed. What will people say in 35 years about the way that we treat children and parents now? And I think we really do need to think about, and we need to work together to find a way that we can make the family justice system work for everyone. It's not easy. If it was easy, we'd be doing it. We need to think about how we change things. We need to maybe, a bit of blue sky thinking, which on a grey day might be difficult. For me, focus on solutions. That came through from Stephen's talk. It was great to see that his definition of parental alienation managed to fit very well with everybody else's definition of parental alienation. So maybe one of the things that we draw from this is an agreed definition of parental alienation. So we can all be singing off the same hymn sheet. And I think that may really help. It's great to hear a judge use an example of the child who refuses to go to school. How many times have we come up with that as an example? We need to see ways that things can be more robust. I thought it was I was struck by the response that he gave to one of the people here. The pain you feel is quite obvious, and I feel sorry about that. What is the point of going to court 37 times? He also sees the importance of more support. A bit less kind of punishment and a bit more support might be a way forward. And I was interested in how he looked at the threshold between private and public law in alienation cases. Anthony Douglas. Now, the great thing is that we've got Cafcass Cymru, so I never deal with Anthony Douglas. So I've not had a lot of dealings with him. Can we please recognise the bravery and the candour of the man coming here and talking to us? I think, CAFCAS have shown that by engaging with us on these issues, that there is a way forward. I was also struck by Anthony clearly acknowledging the existence of parental alienation and speaking about his own personal experience of it in his life. So let's not, and I know this might be controversial, let's not throw rocks at CAFCAS. Let's not throw rocks at Anthony Douglas as somebody who doesn't get it with parental alienation. He's the chief executive of a very, very large, complex organisation that is doing an enormously difficult job. Let's recognise that. Let's be part of a solution, not part of a problem. He said there's usually a part to play in every high conflict case. He also recognised the experience of an adult child who'd accused the father, but now freely admitted he made the story up. Now let's also reflect on how difficult that must have been for the professionals who were dealing with that case, because it, as he said, it ended up with criminal convictions. I'm very interested in him talking about parental alienation cases needing therapeutic help. I think he was very candid about recognising the training and the mindset issues among some of his staff, but let's not knock the man for actually defending the people who work for him. I mean, I think we'd think less of him if he turned up and said, do you know what? Yeah, I'm managing a bunch of idiots who can't do a single thing. I keep telling him. He's not going to say that, and I don't want him to say that. I just want him to work with us. Very interesting pilot in the north of England to resolve cases without safeguarding work or a FEDRA. Boy, that would be an interesting pilot, and I would want CAFCAS to engage with us, because we have branches in the north of England, and we may be able to help. Joanna, tremendously helpful, very practical advice. For God's sake, don't lose your packs, because there's tons of really, really important material in there from Joanna. Making allegations of harm. It's a complex issue. It is a complex issue. We know that CAFCAS and Women's Aid did the research that identified 62% of cases involve some allegations. The figure is 48%. I have that because the Ministry of Justice have just undertaken some work. I couldn't possibly reveal that I asked them. And what they've done is they've looked at the number of allegations on C100s, and they've worked with HMCTS to then come up with a figure for cases that involve allegations made subsequent to the submittal of the C100. So I think we it's not 62%, but it's not a million miles away from that. And I think we have to recognise that allegations are made in a very significant number of cases, and we need to think about how we treat that. I'm going to mention Hamish. I'm so pleased that Hamish could make it. Thank God you respond to instruction. I mean, if I talked about Sue as an inspiration, boy, Hamish is another inspiration. Focus on the child who is alienated. You know, there's a tendency for FNF to be portrayed as a father's rights organisation. Yeah, of course we see more fathers than we do mothers. Yes, of course we do. But let's also not lose sight of the fact that FNF is a children's rights organisation. That's what we're here to do. We're here to defend the right of a child to maintain direct contact and a meaningful relationship with both parents following divorce or separation. We're luckier in Wales because that's actually the law. Because the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is a requirement for Welsh ministers to have due regard to when exercising any of their powers. So, finally from Hamish, people assume the rejected parent must have done something very wrong. How many times have we heard that? I gave evidence to the House of Commons Justice Committee on the pre-legislative scrutiny of the 2014 Children and Families Act. And reflecting on it, looking at it again, one of the points that I made was that the probably 5% of people who come to our meetings in Wales who are non-resident mothers are perhaps the most disadvantaged people that we see. Because if you're a dad and you're not seeing the children, there's a kind of assumption that, oh, well, sorry, mate, yeah, you know, things aren't fair. When you're the mother and you're alienated, when you're the mother and you're the non-resident parent, people assume that you must have done something so unspeakable that you deserve that situation. So absolutely, let's take away from here the importance of recognising that whilst the majority of alienated parents are likely to be men, women face the problem, and when they do, it's often worse. So, what I want us to think about is how we move forward. For me, this has been a tremendous event. We've heard a lot of impressive speaking about the issues. Now let's move forward. Now let's find a way that we turn this into tangible actions. How do we become part of the solution and not part of the problem? Now there's going to be a post-meeting for those people who want to take part in further discussions, and I want that to be absolutely solution focused. I know we've got problems, and I know that the identification of the problems are important in coming up with the solutions, but for goodness sake, let's come up with those solutions. We're going to need resources. We're going to need resources. I've been approached by some people who are prepared to put some money into some form of work, some campaign to move things forward. I want to talk about that briefly, and I want to say that we need to find a way that we develop a plan, and from that plan, we need resources to be able to take things forward. And so a small group of people are prepared to match funds up to £20,000 for us to create resources to move the issues forward. And if you want to be part of that, we'd be very welcome for you to be enrolled.
Can I suggest an alternative to that?
Oh, go on.
Roll the back.
30,000.
We could crowdfund for it instead.
Fantastic.
And I could help.
Brilliant. Bless you. Right. Yep. That's what we need first. What I'm saying is, it's no good simply asking people to put money in a bucket now. What we have to do today, following this, is come up with the solutions. But let's also recognise that those solutions will require resources to achieve them. I'm conscious that even I've overrun. Who'd have thought it from me? Good God. Rob, can I say, I suspect that that's better in the follow-up meeting. It's a great point. It's a great point, and I wouldn't want to stop you, but I'm conscious I need to hand over to Vincent. And he's a lovely man, but always, Vincent, always. So thank you all very much for coming. And let me hand you over to the irrepressible. Can I just say, before he comes up, I hate the Irish.
Oh.
And the reason that I hate the Irish is because they're just like the Welsh, only with charisma.
Kingsley Tom Jones.
Okay, it's not so easy to follow on, it's not so easy to close. So I have about 10 minutes. I'll try and do this in 3 stages, because I'm going to make several mistakes. So I'm not going to apologize in advance. Just rest assured I will make mistakes. When I said earlier on at the beginning, the introduction, that we are a shared parenting charity, we're not on men's rights, we're not even on father's rights. Another thing I often say to men, it's usually fathers at the meeting, it's not always about, but usually, giving out about their ex being such this, that, and the other. And a comment I often say to them is, when you and her were doing jiggy and making children, what do you think of her then? Was she wonderful or was she horrible? The problem is, you see, there's an adversarial system. And when problems come into a relationship, that's when the adversarial system, and it's not so much the judges or even Kafkas, I'll talk about them in a moment, lawyers, or solicitors, or barristers, or FNF who are the problem. It's the local, what I call vigilantes, attached to the local services so often. And an example of that is, so many men who come to our meetings are destroyed, and the relationship is broken effectively between them and the children, before it ever gets to a fighter, before it ever gets to a court. And too often it appears, particularly what someone said earlier about the working class dyspraxia and that, any of those disadvantages, and a lot of people in the South East have not got the money for 2 homes. It's a wonderful wish, but they don't have it. They feel they're smashed before they even get to the court. Because too often the court seems to be just consolidating the views of the local agencies, the DV agencies, and all the other services approach with the local services. Now, when this information came out about the parental alienation, a barrister wrote and organised a protest outside. And among the words, because there's an open letter to Kafkas and NSPCC to not attend this, and I'm deeply appreciative that they have overruled that objection. I thank them, because it would have been easy to back out and say, who wants to meet a bunch of angry men? And among the quotations about us were, and this is extracted from a feminist MP in the House of Commons, Linda Jackson, that we at our meetings advise the fathers to kidnap the children, and if that doesn't work, to kill the mothers. This is the circular they were handing out, and they believe this to be gospel. So you see, you have like the rabbi who couldn't understand why the mother wasn't seeing the children. She must have done something wrong. You have this blind bigotry quite often with people, and they're not bad people. They're just in the wrong belief system. But too often they are attached to the services, attached to local authorities, and that's inimical to the problem, because the beginning quite often determines the end. Now, I'm supposed to thank the people, and I was told when you're thanking people, there's 2 ways to do about it. Thank everybody, name nobody, and you make no mistakes. But what the hell is the fun in that? There's a chance of making a mistake or 2. Okay. This would not have taken place without the extraordinary time, ability, and in his own way, phenomenal knowledge of John Baker. And I don't want clapping at every name I mention, because there's going to be a few of them. But I want clapping for one more person who's given travel 120 miles, has charged £30 for expenses, and knows that we're giving £250 to a charity he believes deeply in, and that is Ewan Jones, the man who's been patiently doing everything all day for £30 travel from Bristol. Which leads me on to, for those who want to know about IT, this is my level of phone. I'm just about able to work it. John Baker is worse. All right? Now, we're fortunate enough that on the committee of CLB, they can't be here because they're with their children. It's not great news to be able to say. This work today is not just for today. Because if it's only for today, all we've had is a nice meeting, a nice day, met nice people. That in itself is wonderful. But this is like a wedding. Now we have a bit of a marriage. We're moving on. And we don't want to fall into the traps that a lot of us have in the past. As Paul has said, we want to have a workshop development, some form of the professionals, and some of us FNF people, moving on this situation. We want this to be a cyclical event. Whether it be yearly or whatever is a separate matter. And there's no good doing the hail, hearty fellow, well done and all the rest, nice to meet you again. We need to have work development situation. I am shocked by Anthony Douglas saying that on his webinars, 35 seen one and 22 seen another, and of 2000. I've had 2 parliamentary ombudsman investigations in the Kafkas. I'm fairly confident that most of you could probably have done the same if you had extraordinary willpower to stay involved. But Kafkas are a central situation. And the training and development of some Kafkas, I emphasize some, because I've met some of the most professional child-centered people I've met have been in Kafkas. But when you have an organisation that as DVIP Kosher recommends is for one gender only, I'm afraid that speaks far too loudly of systemic bias. Now, I'm not interested in saying that women should be put into some sort of prison camp to make false allegations or whatever, because they're in an adversarial system. But we need to get past the throwing the rocks, and we need Kafkas and the services and what have you involved to dig more deeply into parental alienation at an earlier stage rather than, indirect contact, send him a Christmas card in a year's time, he will come back to you again. That's meaningless. The only contact that counts is direct personal contact. Now, I also want to thank Michael from the office, because without their assistance and the other trustees, Rob and Wayne and everybody else who helped us, and Jerry Carling, the chair of FNF, who sends his very, very best wishes that this is a hopeful, very successful day. I was talking basically to people who we shared the table with, and Kim Beatson said she wants to be involved moving on, and I asked a few other people, and I missed the lady from Match, and they are the people I want to stay on afterwards to have. We got some bottles of wine, not too many, because you're sensible people. I am not going to talk or try and discuss the relevance of the experts we heard speaking earlier. Are we able to do it justice? And if you jump up and down saying they're wonderful, they're wonderful, they're wonderful, it's for you to decide. I personally, this day so far has gone far, far further than myself and John had envisaged. Because we always know that there's a high level of discipline and focus among FNF attendees. We're so familiar with that, we take it for granted. And to see that being envisaged and put forward in the professional manner it has, and I have to say that the questions put forward by Rob and Michael, and Wayne as well, Stuart, they so accurately got to the core of the problem facing so many fathers. But I'm using that word fathers again. I will always use the word fathers, but we mustn't always use the word fathers. This is not a gender issue alone. It is an issue that causes society an absolute bloody fortune. It's doing incredible damage to people. So that is as serious it can get to at a very serious level. And that's why we need earlier intervention, because when it gets to that stage, you have families destroyed. You have people damaged beyond repair for their lives and their children's lives. So I'm asking those of you who can to please help on the thing that Paul has sent around. I'm asking those of you who have been at the table and the other people I approached during the coffee break to please stay on, and we'll have a 30 or 40-minute session afterwards in another room upstairs called the Dome. I thank each and every one of you who have been here. I'm incredibly proud and impressed by all of you. Security, anyone I forgot, my sympathy, it wouldn't have happened without you. Thank you ever so much, all of you.